You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview innovators in the space every week. Before we get started, I want to put a shout out to the London Vet Show happening the 14th and 15th of November in London, England. It's a great show. I was there last year. And without further ado, Ivan, why don't you go ahead and introduce today's guest?
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm happy to introduce Tony Cairo, a CEO and a co-founder of Anipanion, founder of Animal Technologies, who was ranked as best in entrepreneurship, business, strategic management, and marketing at Babson College. On the personal side of things at Babson, he was a part of the indoor soccer club, ping pong club, consulting club, and entrepreneurial club. That's a lot of clubs. Why did you have an indoor soccer club? As I know, you live in San Diego. You guys don't play outside. What happened?
This is true. And I have to say, Ivan and Shawn, thank you so much for having me today. Really excited to be here with you both. Babson is actually out in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And as you know, Massachusetts can be a pretty cold place. And that said, even though us San Diegans love playing outside in the sun, indoor soccer was pretty much what we had to do when we were in those parts. But I want to give a special shout out to my alma mater, Babson, Go Beavers. And again, very excited to be here, gentlemen.
Telemedicine is a very hot topic, and we've had 3 so far. So the CEOs and founders of different flavor of telemedicine. They were sort of telephone service, and they were true telemedicine. I am, as a veterinarian, struggling. How am I going to use telemedicine in my day-to-day practice? So can you tell us, how do you think veterinarians will use it? Because it's a new sector, I would say, or a new division of the veterinary medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a terrific question. So I just want to backtrack a little bit and just give you a brief update on where we are with Anipanion and what we're ultimately trying to do, and then I could get right into that question. So Anipanion is a leading virtual care platform, and we proudly help practices enable access to care by way of virtual consults. We have a B2B2C model, and so we essentially provide our telemedicine software to veterinary hospitals, and they in turn can use it to communicate and engage with their pet parent clientele more effectively. We like to think of it as the bridge that is really, connecting the communication gaps for the veterinary practice and their clients. And most of our use cases to date really stem from post-operative rechecks, dental and dermal rechecks, preliminary triage scenarios, and behavioral inquiry scenarios. And so the idea here is we firmly believe that based on the practice size, we can leverage this kind of solution as a lead generation tool to get the clients into the door. And then, of course, for instance, enhancing the overall patient experience, I should say. So the idea there is if a client, for instance, happens to bring their pet in for surgery, we can start using our platform to help communicate and walk them through, where their pet is in the surgical procedure process, maybe taking a picture before they're about to go into surgery, and then following suit when they're getting, ready to be picked up. For instance, we could send another text to let them know that they're going to be okay. But really our bread and butter is for the post-operative recheck, or the follow-up, if you will. So a few days later, what we've come to find is for the larger size practices that use Anipanion, most of them prior to using Anipanion were having the client come into the practice. And of course, there's a lot of, how shall I say this, redundancy and inefficiencies when that happens. It takes about 35 minutes to have that client be checked in and out of the practice, and the practitioner is just letting them know, hey, everything looks okay. So if we can find a way to obviously have these video call consults, which have chat built into them, so the clients can share those images like the incision site, letting them know how the healing process is going, and ultimately communicate more effectively through those means, that's going to be a significant value add internally for the practice. So we're essentially helping them do more with less.
That's fantastic. So, Shawn, when you have your new project out, I think you need to learn from Tony how to fit in the pitch for your product anywhere you can. That was amazing. So
nailed it. Yeah,
nailed it. So, the practical question, this is how I look at telemedicine. It's not. I think that it will be wildly adopted, and I think that you're in the right sector. As for any innovation, and I think that's where the telemedicine is at right now. There needs to be sort of the penetration point into the market's mind, and how do you use it in the day-to-day practice. And I think that recheck is the excellent example of how you use that. But all of those use cases that you have, those are very interesting. Do you find that training veterinarians into using them in those different environments, do you see any resistance? And how do you go about convincing them that some workflows should change?
Absolutely. No, that's another fabulous question. It sounds like I'm talking to an expert here, Ivan. I might have to bring you on board Team Anipanion. But joking aside, I think ultimately at the end of the day, change is difficult, right? It's very hard to embrace change in general. I mean, we've tried to get Shawn to show up on time for certain appointments like this podcast today, and sometimes we're just not used to fulfilling those
Very
needs.
nice.
No pun intended there, Shawn, or anything along those lines. Shots fired. But no, in all seriousness, it is difficult. It's not an easy task. We're burning the midnight oil at Team Anipanion to ensure that we can, have our system integrate seamlessly into that practice care flow. And I think the idea right now is, because we're setting the foundation for how telemedicine will be used for many, many years to come, we have to do a lot of hand-holding in that process. And so, again, there's specific strategies that we implement in place to ensure that we can, in turn, roll this out seamlessly. And the first part is getting everyone to be bought into the process. And so one of the beautiful, beautiful benefits of Anipanion is we're integrated with some of the leading practice management systems. And so before, when we were a standalone system, if we wanted to schedule, let's say, a follow-up video chat consultation, the CSRs at the practice would have to literally schedule that in the Anipanion calendar and then quickly log in. Meanwhile, they might be getting a call for someone that's scheduling that appointment slot, but they'd have to quickly log into their PIMS and then, of course, schedule it in that calendar as well. And so, that was a friction point, to be very candid with you. The other thing is, after a consult is completed, how are we making sure that all of that pertinent medical data, the video chat, the chat dialogue, for instance, any images that are shared on that consult, how do we make sure that we can export that and put that into the patient medical record? I mean, initially, we had certain functionalities where they would have to do that manually, but at the same time, now we've been able to work closely with our strategic partners and ultimately ensure that we can push that back into the patient medical record automatically. So I think when we limit these friction points in the overall workflow, that really makes the experience a lot easier to use for the practitioner side. And then, of course, ultimately, that's going to manifest into them being able to use it more frequently, and of course, giving them a guideline to how to do it with certain use cases like rechecks, preliminary triage scenarios, and behavioral inquiries. And over time, we'll see that utilization go up significantly. So we're all about maximizing the user experience. And that, I think, is critical to adapting to changes within our day-to-day.
That's awesome, Tony. Thanks for that. I do have a question for you. I think back to episode 7 when we interviewed Jamie Moody from Vets Direct. It seems as if telemedicine has the potential to be split up into different segments. So Jamie's company, if I can recall properly, it's kind of like the 511 in Canada for preliminary health questions for humans. They do the initial triage and they really focus in on that specific segment of telemedicine. Do you think that telemedicine will be like other areas of veterinary medicine and be broken up into pieces with certain companies specializing in those pieces? Or will it be one integrated health system where, it's one company that does all of the electronic interactions like Anipanion or Vets Direct that kind of supplements those electronic elements of the healthcare experience for an organization? What's your view on that? Where do you see the future?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Shawn. So I think, I did listen to that podcast, fabulous podcast, by the way. And I do have to commend Jamie for what he's doing. I think, we need to assist veterinarians as much as possible to help make their day-to-day significantly easier. And I think telemedicine ultimately empowers them to do that. Not only that, but it serves as a great enabler for the access to care for their clients. But specifically, my opinion on this is that Anipanion will be helping more for the day-to-day business operations, and then for after-hours triage, that's where that kind of helpline or hotline of resources that can kind of route those specific clients to the hospital to an emergency vet or to additional care is really going to be critical to making this whole continuum of care process significantly seamless for the profession as a whole. So I do think that every telemedicine company can specialize in different assets of the overall process, the caregiving process. That said, one of the challenges that we're going to have to combat here moving forward for both Jamie's company and my company is we need to make sure that, there's significant buy-in and trust, and that the protocols that maybe a hotline company like Jamie's is really, really ensuring that they're bulletproof, that the quality is there. Because I know personally from working with so many different hospitals and practice managers and owners, these are their clients. This is their book of business. They built that line of business up for quite some time. And so to pass that along to another company to assist with triage related scenarios is something that will definitely have to, I think take a little bit of time to manifest and to percolate internally, but I definitely think there's a fit for multiple companies in what we're looking to achieve here, which is really all about enabling access to care.
I love that demarcation that you put into different services. One is sort of your day-to-day, and then another one hotline after hours for future of telemedicine. But the challenge that comes with it, and it will be a challenging question to you, I love those here, the toothbrush test. Like, how do we make sure that people keep the app, and then they do know that that is the source of connection back to your veterinarian? Because ultimately, if now we have two telemedicine apps, one's for urgent care and one for day-to-day things, and then I don't even know if they want to have that app altogether, because by statistics, we see our pets for 17 minutes once a year. So is it worth having an app in my pocket and learn how to use it to address a certain problem? Or should I just click the button, through Google Calendar, find their phone number, call and say, hey, this is what's going on. So how are you combating that in your solutions for people to understand that that's the app that they should use as a connection to their veterinarian?
Yeah, no, great. That's a great question. And I appreciate you bringing up more challenges here. I feel like I'm climbing up Mount Everest. So thank you. No, but joking aside,
man, you're just getting started.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Are we done yet? No, joking aside, I do think that we will be that one vertically integrated app, but it's going to take a lot of time for us to get there first and foremost. It's not like we can just throw these two different companies into, a specific practice and try to make it work. But to your point, Ivan, I think there are so many apps in today's profession that the client has to download, and there isn't that one vertically integrated app that can really provide all these different kinds of solutions. Hopefully some genius out there is thinking about it. But that said, I truthfully think that it's all about PIMS integration and making sure that we can at least get those necessary data points and then aggregate them and put them together within our offering. For us specifically, right now, as a startup, you know how this works. Both of you, you have to be hyper-focused at solving one problem. And then from there, you could certainly branch out. So while I did mention in the previous question that there are going to be a couple solutions and providers out there, more than a few, that might be targeting a specific subset of veterinary telemedicine as a whole, I do think there is room for improvement for that one solution to maybe expand their offering out outside of just having day-to-day hours, and maybe put together, a group of veterinary consultants or folks that, might be working from home. And for instance, there's a group on Facebook that's the Moms for Veterinary Medicine Facebook group. And a lot of these moms are pretty much taking time off work because they have to manage and raise the kids, and maybe they just gave birth to certain children as well. And so I think one of the opportunities that we're looking to exploring is, helping them get access to work. And obviously they're at home, but if we can be the plug or the bridge, if you will, that connects those veterinary consultants with clients that need that access to care for specific hospital sites, well, now we can essentially have that after hours kind of hotline built into Anipanion as well. So as we kind of take this back to the original question, the big thing that we really want to focus on is enabling the practice with virtual care software for day-to-day hours. But that said, one of our initiatives by, mid next year is to certainly explore the opportunities around building our own network of veterinary consultants that could in turn offer those kinds of services after hours as well. So again, to your point, Ivan, everything's streamlined. It's all one app. And again, I think, having those types of integration capabilities with the PIMS is critical to making this successful, because again, when you have that type of integration, there's a lot of different applications that can be leveraged moving forward.
Now we're going to the next rung of the ladder. This is where we ask you 2 or 3 questions at the same time, try to confuse the shit out of you and see how you make out. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. So interesting background, Tony. Oracle, TripAdvisor, and then this departure to the veterinary space, which is very interesting, and interested to hear how that journey happened. The next question, let's talk about integrations. You said it's one of your secret sauces. It sounds like a nightmare. So go ahead and spill your guts. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think, I am going to give a little bit of an anecdote here, guys. I definitely want you to understand the true Tony Cairo story and the story for my partners. So feel free to cut me off if it's a little long-winded here, but that's
He's trying to slow us down, Ivan. We're going to have to go after him and get him.
Exactly. I'm just trying to bide as much time as possible, gentlemen. No, but that said, yes, I did start at Oracle, but prior to that, I was working at TripAdvisor. I started as a business development consultant there, climbed up the corporate ladder very quickly after graduating from my alma mater, again, Babson College, go Beavers. And of course, by the second year at Trip, I was able to be tasked with cross-departmental responsibilities, and I got to work closely with elite executives in marketing, product, and engineering teams at Trip. And really, our initiative was to bring about one of their most innovative products to date, which is called instant booking. I had the privilege and honor of working with a team that put together the go-to-market plan and also helped develop the overall robust sales protocols that they use today for their global sales teams in the organization. So, crushed it at Trip. It was a fantastic experience early on. And then following that, I worked with Oracle for a couple of years. On the side, I worked closely with a startup called Toast, currently the leading hospitality and restaurant management POS system. At the time, we were working with some really robust engineers that worked for a company called Endeca. And sure enough, they said, Tony, we can't afford to pay you right now, but that said, we'd love to get you a job at TripAdvisor. So that kind of segued into Trip. But had I stuck around, guys, I'd be a very happy camper. Right now, Toast, that startup that I was working with, is now worth over $3 billion. They are unicorn status, and I would have been employee number one. Hindsight 2020, all of these tremendous experiences have really helped mold me into who I am today. And I'm an avid believer that you have to go through the valleys before you can climb up the mountaintops and see the breathtaking views. So how does that segue into veterinary medicine? Well, I basically had my career in Boston, wanted to come back to San Diego, where I was born and raised. And sure enough, my college roommate, Bobby Reddy, who's my current business partner at Anipanion, happened to be working in San Diego. So when he graduated, he moved to San Diego. And of course, I stayed in Boston working for those companies, as mentioned. He was working for Qualcomm. And when I basically road tripped it back to San Diego, we always wanted to start a business together. We always had these ideas in mind in college. Gosh, should we start this? Should we start that? Babson is an entrepreneurship school. They foster that type of mindset. And we're really proud of it. And so long story short, we started looking at potential opportunities around us. And specifically, I remember Bobby had a professor that said, animal healthcare, veterinary medicine is still decades behind human healthcare. And so there's always going to be opportunities there. So that kind of started, triggering us into thinking, well, maybe we should utilize certain human healthcare technologies and apply them to the veterinary medicine space. And of course, Bobby's father happens to be a dedicated shareholder in Anipanion, and he has a pretty big IT firm overseas that's focused on building robust, secure, connected care technologies on the human healthcare side. My mom is a pretty big executive here with a massive Southern California hospital group. And the more we started thinking about what was around us, the more we started realizing, gosh, it makes sense. Ultimately, if we can start leveraging existing technologies in human healthcare, we can apply them in veterinary medicine because there's a huge, huge opportunity gap there. And the rest is kind of history. To complement that, it kind of hit home personally because my aunt was dealing with several health issues when I moved back to San Diego. She's doing much better now, thankfully, but she had 5 chihuahuas that would never go see the veterinarian. And they were during pretty critical times as well that I got to witness firsthand. Of course, I helped out with those efforts, but there was kind of a light bulb in my mind that said, gosh, putting these dogs in the car is not the easiest thing to do. Wouldn't it be awesome if I could just connect with a pet doctor through telemedicine or be able to text them accordingly? And so I think most pet parents don't really want to deal with the friction points of taking their pet to see the vet because they deem it too expensive or quite inconvenient. And sure enough, in today's day and age where we live in an instant gratification kind of society, why wouldn't we want to be able to connect with our fellow veterinary practitioners from home?
You guys are in market now. You've got customers. What are the most interesting kind of use cases for this software? Like, what are the most interesting things that people are really getting and deriving value from using your platform?
Yeah, Shawn, I think it's really just, it's funny, we call it telemedicine and virtual care, but really it's just it's a new communication method. And the fact that everything can be archived and seamlessly stored in the patient medical record, and the doctors can actually monetize their time from this outside of, being able to just text and get texts and emails from their clients is a huge game changer from that standpoint. But what I will say is some of the use cases today that just come to mind. Gosh, the other day we had a practice that connected with their client, and I guess the client needed help wrapping a bandage around their pet's paw. And so there's, just a lot of quirky kind of things where clients just genuinely need help, and they want to validate whatever their frame of questioning is with their practitioner, because they've built a relationship with that practitioner. They have a lot of trust with that practitioner. And so at the end of the day, we've had a lot of different use cases. I think the other one that was pretty interesting to me is there was one case whereby the pet parent just wanted to pretty much gauge why her pet kept sleeping under the bed, and she couldn't wrap her head around that. So she had to get in touch with her veterinary practitioner and chat with her for about 15 minutes. Obviously, she was a bit of a chatty Cathy like myself today. And sure enough, ended up, engaging specifically with the veterinarian and just asking questions. Again, most of our use cases to date stem around, I would say, rechecks, dental, dermal, post-op. But then again, there are certain behavioral inquiries that come up that are just very strange, very unique. One of the cool ones that we had recently too is, it turns out the pet has really bad anxiety. And so at the end of the day, having that virtual consult from home really helped them out significantly. They weren't freaking out at the practice. They were very relaxed, calm, and composed because they're in their own environment. And so again, we can't underestimate how much stress there is for the pets alone when they are coming into the practice. And so I think there's a lot of value from all angles. There's so many different applications, Shawn, whether it's someone complaining about, why their pet's sleeping under the bed, whether it's an anxiety thing, whether it's just getting some assistance wrapping a bandage around, their pet's paw. Broken nail inquiries as well happen pretty frequently on Anipanion. So there's just a lot going on, but we're proud to kind of be that bridge for the client and the practitioner alike.
You remember the second question, the integration question. I was able to confuse you. It was pretty successful.
No, of course, absolutely. So that said, the integration question, it's not, it's pretty easy. I mean, haven't you guys not had any issues trying to integrate with archaic practice management systems? I completely forgot about it because it's just, it's something that it's a walk in the park, Shawn.
Startup with limited resources. How do you choose, do you choose the biggest ones first? Do you choose the easiest ones first? There's so many of these practice management softwares. They are the epicenter for every veterinary hospital. What's your strategy? How are you doing it? How's it going?
Absolutely. So we are blessed because we have an amazing technology team overseas, and we have access to about 15 developers that are working on our team full time. The adage that we always say in the profession is, because they're about 12 and a half hours ahead of California time, Pacific Standard Time, that is, when we're going to sleep, they're waking up. When they're going to sleep, we're waking up. So we're truly a 24/7 by 365 company. But that said, we have a significant amount of technology resources that really help us punch above our weight. And so coming down to the strategy of how we selected certain practice management systems first, well, we looked at how big the market is. And, there's roughly around 29,000 practices in the market today. And of those 29,000, there's a fair amount, I would say, well over 9,000 of them are using Cornerstone. There's a little bit of a split there with Avamark. Some of the numbers are a little bit questionable as well. But that said, they're pretty much, right around the same frame, I would say, in the sense that, 9,000 is ballpark. What we have been told is kind of how much of the market share that they each own. So 18,000 practices are using Avamark or Cornerstone. Now, when you think about it, that's a huge chunk of the market right there. And so ultimately, that's where we focused our efforts initially. Has it been insanely easy? God, no. And I hope, the talk that I was saying earlier didn't come across off as integration is easy. It's been incredibly difficult. You have to build these incredible relationships with executives at these respective companies like IDEXX and Covetrus. But one of the things that helps us punch above our weight is our technology resources. And so at the end of the day, we've been able to pretty much solidify the integration process well within about 6 to 9 months. It took a little bit of time early on because we were, working with IDEXX, and of course, it was our first rodeo to say the least. So that one took a little bit longer than expected, but as we master these integrations, we're going to be getting a lot more effective with being able to roll out those integrations into the marketplace. And for that matter, integration's super easy, Shawn. Come on, everybody's doing it.
Thanks so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. We're pretty social people, so you'll find us on every social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at theveterinaryiinnovationpodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening.